Hey everyone, welcome to Locked On Lakers for Thursday. Brian Kamenetsky, Andy Kamenetsky. It's August 24th. That's 8:24, which means Lakers fans are talking about Kobe Bryant. We'll do that as well coming up next.
You are Locked On Lakers, your daily Los Angeles Lakers podcast. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Thanks to everybody for making Locked On Lakers your first listen of every day, Monday through Friday, no matter how or where you get your podcasts. Always free, never behind a paywall. And Locked On Lakers on YouTube is where you can go to see the show. Hang out with over 20,000 subscribers, big Lakers fans. I'm going to go ahead and go out on a limb, Andy, say Kobe Bryant fans as well. And of course, August 24th is it an official holiday actually in LA? I know, they're lighting up the Santa Monica Pier with 8 and 24. There's stuff that happens around the city. If it's not an official holiday, it's certainly an unofficial one in LA where people really focus on and are thinking about Kobe Bryant.
Yeah, I mean, whether official or not, it's similar to the way all the murals that, were painted in Kobe's honor around the city after his death. I don't know if there was any permitting involved in terms of, getting each of those walls, but I know this, none of them have come down.
Yeah. Can you imagine being the person who stopped those from being like, excuse me, sir?
Well, it's funny actually. During 2020 and the pandemic and the unrest that was happening all over the country, and certainly in LA, in the wake of George Floyd, and there was not a single Kobe mural that got defaced. I remember noticing this, because there obviously there was buildings that were burned and looted, and there was destruction in the wake of protests and police reaction and all this different stuff. But the thing that I noticed was there was not a single Kobe mural messed with. And I think there was an understanding of respect for Kobe and what he means in this city, and B, good luck being the guy getting caught defacing one of those murals. I mean, you want to talk about you are taking your life in your own hands. Best of luck to you, sir or madam moment. I think it was just a recognition of what Kobe meant then and still means to Los Angeles.
Yeah, and as far as I know, most, at least the bigger ones, the more prominent ones are still around. You can take Kobe mural tours in LA and find them in pretty much every corner of the city. So we put out on the Cam Brothers Twitter feed some questions, kind of an informal Kobe Bryant mailbag. We did that, on Twitter, on the YouTube channel as well. And so we're going to kind of go through and answer some of those questions. But one of the things that I kind of wanted to start with, honestly, it goes back to because we get a lot of things, and it's along the lines of what we were talking about here in terms of what he means for the city. We get this question all the time, what was it like to cover him? That was kind of one of the questions that we got here today. What was it like to be around him? What was it like to cover him and all that kind of stuff?
Yeah, we were asked by both Steve Weiss, 1656, Steve Wise and Alexander, both on the YouTube channel. Just essentially, favorite memories of Kobe off the court, what it was like interacting with him. Because for people who don't know, Brian and I covered the last 10 years of Kobe's career. We were around the team on a daily basis, which means by extension, you were around Kobe a lot. And really, in a lot of ways, covering the Lakers meant you were covering Kobe.
Yeah.
You really were.
And, so we can answer the question about specific memories and things like that. But when you were on vacation, I had Darian Vaziri on, who is, of course, the host of Locked On Clippers, but also hosts the Dime Dropper Pod, which is all about LA basketball. And he is a huge Kobe guy, huge Kobe fan, which is not unusual for somebody who grew up in LA. But the difference is, I have not had a lot of chances because we were covering the team. We're in our 30s, and I forget exactly how old we were when we started, but like, we were around the team as adults, covering it with other adults, and we didn't experience Kobe in the same way that Darian did. Darian was an elementary school aged Kobe fan growing up. That's a totally different thing. And it was really kind of just fascinating for me to listen to that perspective, and what a different experience that was, and the way people. And now, what I think is really interesting about Kobe too, Andy, is that there's a whole other generation of people, of kids, because the Kobe Bryant name is still so resonant among basketball fans, and the legend of Kobe is still so resonant, that are experiencing him through days like this, through YouTube clips, through eventually the statue ceremony, through his shoe drops, through all of this stuff, but not him, but not the person, like who was obviously no longer with us. And that it's almost like another generation like this. There are these iterations of the Kobe experience that continue to live on today and evolve today in ways that I find very interesting. Our experience was different than Darian's. Darian's is going to be different than our kids. Our kids will have a different experience than, kids born 5 or 10 years behind them.
Well, it's funny that you say that. My daughter was born in 2011, which means that she was a very little kid for the tail end of Kobe's career. She's 12 now, but she was really alive during the tail end of it. And, really the age where she was even old enough to understand looking at a television and processing what was on it, that was after Kobe blew out his Achilles and was never really the same player. And beyond that was hurt a lot. And he would be at games often in street clothes watching because he couldn't play. I remember there was one time where I was watching probably a road game from home, and my daughter, she's like, I don't know, 4, 3, something like that, and just sitting with me, not really paying attention to the game because she doesn't really have any interest in basketball at all. Like, other than volleyball, she really has no interest in sports. But just out of nowhere, she asked me who was the man sitting on the bench in a suit. And the reason was she was just wondering why they kept showing this man.
Also, it was probably a phenomenal suit.
Oh yeah,
probably interested in the tailoring as much as anything else. I know that was always one of the things. Half the time, especially if it's sort of a regular mundane sort of game, Kobe was always impeccably dressed, and so there are times I absolutely would be holding the microphone up to is close enough to earshot, whatever. But really, what I'm thinking is, God, that's a gorgeous fabric, and the tailoring is impeccable.
Right. But she was just curious who this person was. And I explained that was Kobe Bryant, and that he was a really great player, and he's hurt right now. And she started asking me questions about him. And I explained, that he won 5 championships. And it was really funny, actually. I told her that he won 5. And her immediate reaction was, that's not that many. And I was like, well, no, actually it is. I'm like, how many is a lot to you? And she goes, 100. And my immediate reaction was, Kobe would respect that. Like, I think he would really appreciate that. But she kept just asking me more and more questions about Kobe, like up until the point where he retired, and even after that. And she considers herself a really big Kobe Bryant fan, despite the fact that she never really saw him play, and again, doesn't really have any interest in basketball.
No.
But she really, she has a Kobe and Gigi shirt that she wears a lot. She has a Kobe jersey that she wears every once in a while. Like, she's legitimately into Kobe, even though, again, like, the actual sport means very little to her, and she really didn't see him play. And she hasn't even sought out, like, clips of him playing.
And that to me is, she's not the only one who's like that. And, we live in an era now where kids, especially, the youths, consume sports primarily online, through whether it's YouTube, other ways of getting highlights, whatever it might be. They're not sitting, generally speaking, they're not sitting in front of games, TV, watching full games. And it is an era that is, I think, kind of perfect for transmitting and perpetuating the sort of the Kobe whether it's mythology, which we talked about all the time with him, but just the ability to be a Kobe fan and the experience of him playing and what he was off the court and all these other things. And you see clips. It's just it really did get me thinking, talking to Darian, and it was just, and people should leave their experiences on the YouTube page, and we can maybe go back to them, later in the week or next week or whatever. But it's fascinating to me to see the different ways and be reminded of the different ways that people experience Kobe and think of Kobe and look at Kobe, because ours was very specific. So we'll answer maybe a little more detail those questions about covering him, and then we had a ton of really interesting what ifs that really amount different questions that amount to different types of what ifs that we'll get to. So we'll do all of those things next.
Locked On Lakers brought to you by Ibotta. You're picking up some burgers and dogs for a back-to-school barbecue. You might as well get some cash back with it with Ibotta. Stop spending your hard-earned money without getting anything in return. Enter Ibotta. You're already spending the money, so get some cash back for your troubles with Ibotta. Either link your loyalty account or upload your receipt after your shop, and you get your cash back. It's that simple. The average Ibotta user earns $120 a year in real cash back. Again, real cash back, not points that, let's be honest, nobody ever uses. They're a hassle. Nobody can even figure out what to do with them. You earn cash back on hundreds of online brands and retailers, including Lowe's, Macy's, Sephora, Best Buy, and more with Ibotta. And right now, Ibotta is offering our listeners $5 just for trying Ibotta using the code LOCKED when you register. Just go to the App Store or Google Play Store and download the free Ibotta app and use the code LOCKED. That's IBOTTA in the Google Play or App Store, and use that code LOCKED.
So the question in this form, at least, and a couple people asked something similar, Alexander, but also Steve Wise, 1656. I think it'd be interesting to hear more stories from the two of you describing your interactions with Kobe, along with letting us know what his relationships were with individual teammates. We don't have to get through all of those things, but Andy, what's something like your reaction when you see a question like that? It's something we're asked a lot.
There were a couple of things that jumped out at me in terms of thinking about the relationships with teammates that also kind of lets you know who Kobe was and how they felt about him. Remember when Kobe did that infamous photo shoot in the white outfit?
The LA Times.
Yeah, with the white scarf and the white outfit and the white hat and bow tie, and was,
which, by the way, this is an outfit that Kuz would just wear to a game now.
Right. A lot has changed since the time when Kobe did this. But at the time, it was considered pretty out there, pretty bizarre. And I got to be honest, Kobe was an impeccable dresser. Really one of the most fashionable athletes I've ever seen. This was the rare miss.
It was a little ridiculous.
But, when these photos dropped, we were going around showing them to different teammates. And I remember Derek Fisher's reaction when he saw this was, wait, are these real?
Yeah.
This is in Photoshop. This is real. We explained it was real. He's like, okay. Then Pau Gasol, being Pau, was very, statesmanly and very political in talking about, well, it's an interesting choice for Kobe, and Kobe has always been very into fashion, and I'm glad to see that he did something like this. You could tell Pau's thinking, not for me, but I'm not going to say it. Meta, however, because Meta openly worshipped Kobe, made no secret about it. Meta was going on and on about how incredible Kobe looked. He looks amazing, absolutely amazing. And just Mamba 24, man, this is incredible. The other thing that I also thought about was Sasha Vujacic used to have his personal website. He's actually, to give Sasha credit, one of the first athletes I recall having a personal website. And he used to do a lot of videos of him on the beach with very like tinny fake reggae in the back, talking about playing 6-man volleyball in Manhattan Beach, and videos of him trying on headbands that fans had sent him. And none of the Lakers were aware that this existed until you and I pulled Kobe aside and showed him these videos, and he just started dying laughing. He's like, I can tell you what we're going to be watching on the team playing, because they were about to leave to go somewhere to play. Yeah. He's like, this is what we're watching.
We served up Sasha there. So like, and by the way, just as when you look at those pictures, by the way, the only thing now that you would even look at are like is like the hats or like the headscarf and stuff like that. Everything else is like totally normal, but at the time it was really out there. I think about Kobe and the change in what it was to talk to him and cover him, sort of post Achilles, but also like post the team has any prayer of winning at all. And he would, there's the clip that was circulating. I'm sure people have seen it today. It was circulating Wednesday on like the one from Kimmel where like the guys, Nick Young and, Carlos Boozer popped it, hey! Like that one, like they beat the Celtics, broke the 8-game streak. And Kimmel's like, would that have happened if you were there? Like that kind of celebration for breaking a losing streak, and Kobe just glares at him like, no. But there was especially
he could have been there. I mean, that was one of the
unspoken playing, is my point.
No, but it was one of the unspoken truths of those seasons was Kobe very actively distanced himself from those teams.
Yes, but there was when there was both, I think he understood like, I am no longer the player who can lead a team in this way physically on the court or whatever. Sure. And there isn't enough support around me. We're really not winning anything. You're right. He did sort of disassociate and all that when he was around. The difference in how you would like ask, he was no longer a guy who was sort of, he was so established at that point, and his legacy was so set at that point, and was also not going to change at that point. There was nothing left to do and no means to do it, even if they couldn't win another title anyway. They didn't have the option of doing it. And so there was a comfort and a security in how he would talk to fans, how he would answer questions, talk about teammates and stuff like that, where a little bit of the pretense that went along with the creation of the Kobe Bryant mythology, which was a fascinating thing to watch in and of itself over the course of his career, kind of went away. And he was just an older guy with a ton of experience answering questions, particularly if you thought they were good ones, in real depth. It was a fun era to be around when you had, albeit more limited, opportunities to talk to him. That's the part where I found sort of where he was the most interesting and vulnerable, beyond stuff like the Game 7 press conference or something like that, where he admitted, this moment almost ate me up.
Yeah, I mean, I used to love just talking with Kobe, about movies, TV, stuff like that, and like stuff that had nothing to do with basketball, because by year 3 or 4 of covering him, like I'd asked him every single basketball question I could possibly ask. I mean, you know what I mean? Like at some point you run out of questions to ask him related to the game that aren't in some ways a rehashing of what you've already asked. And, that's part of covering a team on a day in, day out basis. But it's, just learning what sparked his, intellectual and creative curiosity, which was something that made Kobe very unique. I mean, he was one of the smartest athletes I've ever been around, one of the most genuinely intellectually curious athletes I've ever been around.
The biggest separator, I believe, between him and Michael Jordan is intellectual curiosity.
And the thing too about covering him that I know other reporters didn't always appreciate, and to some degree it might have been a function of the way we were allowed to cover Kobe with more in the Lakers with more flexibility than like a formal beat writer, who was, assigned
we didn't need to draw information out of him. We didn't need to be the people breaking news on like every single Kobe controversy. There were other people there for that. Our job was really more to analyze what was happening and talk about it.
But one of the things that I did really appreciate about covering Kobe is he would challenge you to ask smart questions. And if he thought a question was stupid, he would let you know. And there were times where he was right. And there were times where I think he was being dismissive because he didn't feel like answering the question. And you would have to go back at him. And I think he respected that you would go back at him. Like, he wasn't looking to, I think, break it off because he didn't want to answer the question. It's like, what do you actually want to ask me? Like, do you actually want to know this? Are you in any way curious about what you're asking me? And that was something that I'd like to think made us both better at our jobs. He could sniff out the BS in a way that, he would demand more from you if he suspected BS. And again, that was something I actually really appreciated about him.
Let's set up this what if. This comes from Nathan Mark at the Nathan Mark 20. This came to us on Twitter at Cam Brothers. I think we were robbed of Kobe ending his career at the same level that LeBron currently is. Agree or no? That 2012-13 season essentially ended his prime, was so elite. I can't see how that wouldn't have translated to him to still being a top 10 to 15 player for a couple more seasons. That what would have happened to Kobe? Like, how long could he have played at that level? Had it not been for the Achilles question, is certainly one of the great what ifs when you talk about Kobe. So would he have been like LeBron, playing now, going into his year 21 season as an all NBA caliber player? We'll ask that question next. So LeBron, Andy, is putting up, just absurd numbers for a guy. He will now be moving into his 21st season. You're talking about Vince Carter played 22, and then you've got Kevin Willis and Robert Parrish and Dirk are the other guys who have played that long. None of them were putting up numbers even kind of close to what LeBron did in his 20th season. Nathan Mark referenced that 2012-2013 season. Kobe averaged over 27 points on 46% shooting. That was his highest shooting percentage since the 2008-2009 season. So, I mean, to say the least, he elevated in a big way. Six assists a game, over 6 assists a game, and over almost 5.5 rebounds a game. Nathan's right, playing at a truly elite level still in that season. How many more seasons of that would it have been? Do you think he could have gotten to year 20 playing like LeBron is playing now?
It's so hard to say. I mean, there's no template for what LeBron is doing. I mean, there really is no comp. The guys who've played this long didn't do it with these type of responsibilities or as prolific. The thing about Kobe, and this is an unknowable, but it's always been a theory of mine, I always suspected that Kobe was going to leave. If he could have left the game on his own terms, I always suspected that he was going to leave a little bit earlier than people expected, leaving potentially a little bit on the table. This was in part because of an interview he did with Jim Gray, probably around 2011 or 12, something like that, where he kind of offhandedly, or seemed like offhanded. Kobe never really said much that was totally offhanded, but he said that something to the effect of when I leave the game, nobody will see it coming. So as part that always stayed with me and always made me curious, but also too, Kobe is not the type of guy that would have wanted fans to see him vulnerable in any way.
Yeah.
And it's hard to know if he ever would have been vulnerable, but Kobe's standards for a lack of vulnerability were extremely high.
He was not going to do what Vince Carter did, what Dirk did. Certainly not what Kevin Willis was that for the last 14 years of his career. I mean, that's what he did.
Kobe was never going to be one of those guys who played forever because he wanted to be in the league.
Right. He wasn't going to reinvent. He wasn't going to reinvent himself in the way that Vince Carter did, where Vince Carter was like, I'm happy to become that role player. He wasn't going to do that. So it was either stay elite, and look, you don't go from averaging 27, 6, and 5.5 on 46% shooting to trash in a year. Like, there were still clearly, some years left in him at, and that was his age 34 season. So, could he have gotten to 36, 37, 38 and still play? If you could avoid major injury, I think he's getting towards, year 18, you're doing wildly unprecedented things. Does he get to LeBron at year 20? I think the size helps LeBron. Kobe would have been more, even as a big guard, would have been more vulnerable as a slightly smaller player.
It's also just hard to know when an athlete's body will stop cooperating.
Right. I think the biggest question about that is how much help could the Lakers have kept putting around him? Because part of what is helping extend LeBron's career is the ability to play with an Anthony Davis or something like that. And when LeBron has to do more, he tends to break down, which is completely understandable. So I think so much of it is related to how much more the Lakers could put around him. But I think there is a bit of a perception that okay, well, there was this long stretch of time after the Achilles injury where Kobe was kind of done, so to speak, played a bunch of seasons after that. But it really isn't. He missed most of the season that followed and then played 2 seasons after that. And clearly wasn't the same guy.
And he missed he missed a lot of games during that period too.
Right. He did. He went from 78 the season, hurt the Achilles, to 6 to 35 to 66. And he was clear, the knee was a problem, and just everything broke down after that. But had the Achilles not happened, you're getting at least another season or 2 of pretty elite play, which puts him into his 35, 36 year season, which is pretty astonishing. Does he get to 20 like LeBron? I don't know, but regardless, he was going to do things that were completely unprecedented. So one more I want to get to, and it kind of gets into a couple questions people asked. One from Dylan S. What's your greatest what if on Kobe's career? And this one from Big E at Eric M. Herrera. If the Nets hadn't been scared and selected Kobe instead of Kerry Kittles, how fast would it take Kobe to run that franchise, and how long do you think he would have lasted in Jersey? My answer for Dylan's question, the greatest what if on Kobe's career, is related to the other one that Eric is asking, because I have always wondered what happens on the Earth 2 where they do take him, because the Nets would eventually become a pretty decent franchise under Byron Scott, and they go to finals and stuff. But it took a couple of years. They were a sub 500 team when Kobe was drafted. And so I asked him that question once, if they had taken you, would you have still won as many titles? Would you?
They were well below 500
right.
until the Jason Kidd trade before the 2001-2002 season.
And so I asked him that question, if they'd taken you, would you have won 5 titles? Would you have had the same level of success? He said, I asked him that. He said, absolutely. I was like, how do you? I was like, I would have figured it out. And I don't doubt that he would have won a title or 2. I don't think he could have won 5, just with that around him. Entering a team like the Lakers with the kind of pedigree and a pretty good team already, and the ability to go get Shaq and all these other things. But how Kobe could or / would have willed himself to success in a less accomplished franchise with less stuff around? Would he have been like LeBron, moving from place to place? Would he have would he have gotten coaches fired? Would he have brought? I don't know, but that would have that personality with a different context than what the Lakers were able to offer is to me a completely fascinating thing to think about.
Yeah, I mean, how long would it have taken to run the Nets? Roughly 30 seconds. That's my guess. Kobe entering.
Well, at the very least, how long did you think he was running the Nets?
I think and actually probably would be pretty close. Given that Nets organization he'd be joining, about 30 seconds. The what if that jumps out to me is always, I mean, you could bring up the CP3 trade, that was canceled by the league, hashtag basketball reasons, hashtag never forget, which we both think that was the precursor to eventually trading Andrew Bynum for Dwight Howard 2 years earlier than they actually did trade Andrew Bynum for Dwight Howard. But I actually think about the Kobe, Nash, Powell, Dwight team. If Nash had not gotten hurt, I always think about, though, what could have happened. And I would just want to see two guys who were so opposite in their temperament, but really, really smart players who respected the hell out of each other and were both pretty sickly competitive, teamed up with each other. It would have been fascinating to watch if it had all actually been able to try to go right.
Yeah, and because I think Nash was ready and willing and able to pull back, so to speak. I don't think Nash needed to be Steve Nash. Like he was well past, I think, that was still. But you're right, he was a very effective player. We just never got to see it because that injury, which was so freaking weird. That nerve injury that developed from the knee bump thing. It never launched. It just never launched. And obviously the failure to launch there had serious implications for the rest of Kobe's career.
Yeah.
It was a 20-year career that was obviously worth celebrating on multiple levels with tremendous amounts of success. And like I said, people our age, older, younger, Laker fans for 100 years, Laker fans for 5, all I think have found different ways to connect with the player Kobe Bryant, the concept of Kobe Bryant. Like there's so many different ways to look at it. We could probably do 20 shows on it. But we'll just do this one. Locked On Lakers on YouTube is where you can go to see the show, hang out with over 20,000 subscribers. We'll be back next time with a little more Andy. People can't stop talking about Austin Reeves. So we got some of that we want to get into and plenty more on the next show. See everybody next time.